Students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today you'll be learning all about the Declaration of Independence, and here are your objectives for this video. Please pause the video to look them over and get ready to take some notes whenever you see the answers. In the last lesson, you looked at a lot of different things that angered the British colonists in the years after the French and Indian War. Let's summarize two main events. First, the King of England, George III, issued the Proclamation of 1763, which forbade the colonists from settling in the lands that England had just won to the west of the Appalachian Mountains. Second, he started to enforce mercantilism and collect new taxes in order to raise money. He ended salutary neglect and started enforcing limits on who colonial merchants were able to trade with. And at the same time, Parliament passed new tax laws. Tension over these actions was exacerbated by violence at the Boston Massacre and the destruction of property at the Boston Tea Party. A group of people called Patriots began to advocate for complete independence from England. In 1776, one of the Patriots, a Virginia planter, a plantation owner, named Thomas Jefferson, wrote a document called the Declaration of Independence. And on July 4th, 1776, members of the Continental Congress met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and signed the Declaration. When you barbecue and light fireworks on July 4th, you are celebrating that event, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Note that this is not the day that the colonists became independent. They still had to fight and win a war before that could happen. This was just the day that they signed a paper saying that the 13 colonies were now free from British control. The Declaration can be broken down into three main sections. In the first section, Jefferson states the purpose of the document, which is informing King George III that the colonists are now independent from England. The second section is the most important part of the Declaration. In the second section, Jefferson summarizes his views about government and argues that under certain circumstances, people are justified in rebelling against their leaders. Jefferson, in other words, is giving people permission to take up arms, fight against their own leaders, and possibly kill them. Think about that quite radical idea and ask yourself, do I agree that people have the right to rebel against their own government? If so, under what circumstances? This is an incredibly complicated question, and it is what makes the Declaration of Independence such an influential document. In the third section, called the List of Grievances, Jefferson supports his argument for rebellion by listing all the actions of King George that he considers unfair to the colonists. Let's focus on the second section. Jefferson's ideas in this section belong in the context of a European intellectual movement of the 17th and 18th century called the Enlightenment. Try saying that word, enlightenment. Enlightenment. You probably learned about the Enlightenment in Global. The Enlightenment was about a lot of things, but one of its major themes was challenging the idea of monarchy or government by a king. In the picture here are a few Enlightenment philosophers, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Charles de Montesquieu, who looked critically at monarchy and wondered if there was a better way to run a government. Jefferson did not come up with the ideas in the Declaration on his own. He took them from these Enlightenment philosophers. Let's look at a few Enlightenment ideas that Jefferson was impressed by. The first Enlightenment idea in the Declaration of Independence came from John Locke, and it's the idea that all men, and only men, have what are called natural rights. Natural rights are rights that every man is born with. These rights don't have to be bought or won or earned. You just have them, and nobody is supposed to be able to take them away. The three natural rights are life, liberty, and property. Life means your life is sacred and murder is a crime. Liberty means that humans should be free to make choices about how to live their own lives as long as they do not interfere with the natural rights of others. and property, which Jefferson refers to as the pursuit of happiness, means that once a man has bought something like land or goods, nobody else is allowed to take them away. This belief in private property is also a basis for the economic system of capitalism. Ideas about capitalism were developing during the Enlightenment too, and it's no coincidence that the founding text of capitalism, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, was published in 1776, the same year as the Declaration of Independence. To summarize, the three natural rights are life, liberty, and property, although Jefferson changed Locke's wording and referred to property as the pursuit of happiness. The second Enlightenment idea in the Declaration is called consent of the governed. This idea, which also came from Locke, promotes a form of government called democracy, where citizens get to vote on who their leaders are. This means that the government must consider the people's opinions when it makes decisions. It must be accountable to the people. Indeed, the government's power comes from the people, and a government only has power if its citizens, or the governed, give the government their permission to be in charge. We call this permission to be in charge consent, and the governed give their consent by voting. If the citizens don't like what their leaders are doing, they show their disagreement by voting for different leaders. So the government only has power if the citizens, the governed, allow it to. When the Patriots chanted no taxation without representation, they were objecting to tax laws passed by a government that they were not allowed to vote for. In other words, a government they did not give consent to. And the third Enlightenment idea in the Declaration of Independence came from Rousseau and is called the social contract. The social contract is an agreement between the citizens and their government. In this agreement, or contract, both sides are agreeing to do something. The citizens are deciding to give up some of their free will to the government. They're giving the government some authority or control over them. In return, the government promises to use its power to protect people's natural rights. If the government does not fulfill its part of the contract, if it does not protect citizens' natural rights, then the contract is broken, and the citizens have the right to overthrow their leaders and give power to different people. So to go back to the question we asked earlier, when is it okay to rebel against your own government? Here's what Jefferson says in the Declaration. People can overthrow the government if the government breaks the social contract and violates the people's natural rights. Here's a picture of George III, King of England in 1776. Imagine for a moment how he would have reacted when he read the Declaration of Independence. Here were a group of people, the colonists, telling him, the king of the most powerful country on earth, that he had no authority over them. George III was not about to let that happen. He prepared for war, and over the next 7 years, his troops would fight the rebellious colonists in what we call the American Revolution. All right, students, that's all for today. Let me go back to my objectives. I want you to go back, make sure you have answered all of these. If you don't know any, just rewind the video. Tune in next time, and I will see you in class.